All right. Welcome to the DigiGods podcast. We are now into the month of November, and that means that we are still in the World Series of baseball moment, which means Mark is not here because his beloved Mets are in the World Series, and that is an almost impossible occurrence, and Mark wouldn't miss it for his life. So I am here with our dear friend and colleague, Tim Cogshell, sitting in for Mark. Thank you, Tim.
I do not have a favorite baseball team, so I'm solid. I'm good. I'm good for the whole thing.
Well, you're from St. Louis, and the Cardinals.
I love the Cardinals. I grew up watching the Cardinals, who are World Series and late season perennials.
Yes,
I should say, but I don't want to upset Mark. So.
Well, he's there in New York, and he's just thrilled. So we wish him well, and we are happy that he is there. But you know, when Mark's not here, the cats play, I think, as the saying goes. And that means that I get to talk about Kid-Vid and British television and opera and not have to get slaughtered for it.
All those things that would just upset him so much.
So much. So we're going to we have some really, there's some great classic films, some great Criterion stuff, some interesting new movies out. A lot of the interesting kind of mid to late-ish summer stuff. Actually, kind of early pre-summer, spring-ish is a lot of coming out now too. So we're getting a lot of good product. So we'll crank through as much of this as we possibly can. But for starters, I'm going to burn through Kid-Vid because we've gotten a lot of it lately, and my daughter is a kid. So Halloween, by the way, how was Halloween in your neighborhood?
Yeah, Halloween was fairly dark in my neighborhood. Actually, to be honest with you, kids don't do it anymore.
Yeah,
they don't roam the streets in the little costumes as we did at children. They go to parties and stuff like that.
See, I find there are certain neighborhoods, like we went to a neighborhood over here where there are a lot of relatively rich people with way too much money and time on their hands. And I guess they like to compete for what house has they want to win an award from this local paper in this adjacent community, so they all compete for who gets to deck their house out the most. And it's kind of insane. There are like automated spiders that move and giant inflatable cats with their eyes and heads moving and fog machines. It's nuts.
Would it be funny if they could figure out a way to make all of that work for Christmas as well? Just put a red furry cap on top of something.
But it's, so we took my daughter over there, and she was amazing. And intimidated at first because we probably saw 3,000 or 4,000 kids just in this maybe 5 square block area. It was obnoxious. But if you go right outside it, once the houses are no longer decked out with weird stuff, there's nobody.
You know what's funny? These families, fantastic houses, fantastic decorations, they do it all up in the really fantastic neighborhood, yet they still give out the fun-sized Snickers. That's all. Same thing.
You'd expect them to be giving out like entire...
Some nice chocolate, folks. Come on.
It's funny. These people, you don't even get to walk up and say trick or treat. People literally will set up chairs on their front door with the door open, and then they put their costumes on, and they will have a giant cauldron filled with candy, and they just sit there with a little table, just sipping wine and sort of waving to everybody, and you get to come up and pick your candy, and they're just wait. It takes away the whole joy of pushing the doorbell and getting to say trick or treat when the door opens.
Yeah,
there's no more open doors.
No, it'd be neat if they did that in that neighborhood just every night. Just literally, just sat there on the corner with a little wine.
Oh, well.
Kid-Vid.
We're going to get into it real quickly here. So I'm going to burn through this so I don't bore Tim the way that I bore Mark.
I love this stuff.
Well, first off, Justice League, Attack of the Legion of Doom. This is an original Lego DC Comics superhero thing. The whole Lego animated deal, I'm only kind of just sort of acclimating myself to it because I find the design of the Lego figurines kind of creepy.
Well, they do look like the ones that you actually get.
Yeah, they do.
And this, they're with the little squaring around. So that's a lot of fun.
And this, of course, comes with a little actual figurine, a toy figurine in it, and you, of course, Ultraviolet, which I just think is kind of overkill. But anyway, the whole DC Lego thing, it's combining franchises, and if
I have any qualms about that stuff, the Justice League stuff is frankly a little violent. That stuff is directed at very, very, very young children.
Yeah, true.
And I can't quite get my mind around why we want our 3-year-olds, trying to destroy Metropolis. Or whatever.
We were talking about this a little bit earlier. Tim was playing with my daughter and having a grand old time.
Yeah.
And I was saying, I'm the guy that grew up around Warner Brothers cartoons and Tom and Jerry, and this was great. This stuff was grand. And now I've become that person where I say, ooh, you know what, Tom, he's kind of violent with Jerry when he tries to eat him and punch him, and I'm not sure I want my daughter really exposed to that. And then I sort of slap myself and I say, what have you become? What have you become?
We're okay people,
Yeah.
but yeah, you're right, there's something about that.
Yeah. And then we have a 3-movie gift set if you're a fan of the Equestria Girls from the My Little Pony world. This has a little lenticular cover on it that kind of creeps me out. But this includes...
Mark loves those.
Yeah. We've called them everything from testicular to, on and on and on. But anyway, this includes Equestria Girls, Rainbow Rocks, and Friendship Games. The Equestria Girls are kind of a popular part of the My Little Pony universe. So that is from Shout Kids. That's a nice box set.
I always like to look at those to see if there are any particularly famous names doing any of the voices.
People whose careers have kind of
dwindled. Well, or sometimes they're doing perfectly fine and they're just getting paid even more
money. Yeah. From Mill Creek, something I'm really fond of. This is The Busy World of Richard Scarry, the complete series. 5 seasons, 65 episodes. This, a lot of you may not even remotely remember this, but I grew up on the Richard Scarry books, and I loved his just the world of his animals and those, the books where he creates these busy street scenes and animals are doing a million different things. And this was rather an amazing series, and it ran for 5 seasons, 65 episodes. Really terrific, and it's out now from Mill Creek on a really beautiful DVD set. So if you remember that show, I highly recommend it. Chuggington, not a fan of. Thomas and Chuggington are the 2 train shows on television.
Yes. Yeah.
This is Chuggington, the big freeze, strictly for fans. Adventure Time. I keep promising our fans of Adventure Time that I will try to understand why this show is popular, but the artwork just creeps me the hell out. This is Adventure Time, the Enchiridion.
Don't you hate it when that happens?
Yeah, when they have names that I can't pronounce and kids are supposed to pronounce it. Got Johnny Test.
Now that's one I remember. The Adventures of an Average Suburban Boy. Not Johnny Quest, Johnny Test. The Adventures of an Average Suburban Boy.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Johnny Test, not to be confused with Johnny Quest. This is 5 seasons, 91 episodes, Cartoon Network.
I don't know why I know that.
I don't either.
I do know why. My niece would have been exactly the right age for that. That's why I know that.
Well, that's out there, and again, that's it's just part of this newfangled animation style where everything has got to be it's sort of like a cross between Ren and Stimpy and anime. Yeah. That's the style that's become popular, except for Adventure Time, which is just weird. It's like they have no... And see, that's why I find Adventure Time creepy. No one actually has any joints. Everybody's like, it's all rubbery and weird and kind of creepy drawn.
Like squigglemation.
Oh, it's not pleasant. Scholastic Storybook Treasures, the classic collection, 20 fairy tales. This is a lovely, lovely collection. Scholastic always does it all upright, and they got some great fairy tales in here. This is all stuff that has essentially been released before, but it's a wonderful collection for people that haven't sort of collected any of these. Cinderella, Little Red Riding Hood, Rapunzel, The Boy Who Cried Wolf, a lot of really, really great stuff in here. So 3 Billy Goats Gruff. I mean, if you've got a kid and you want to teach them all the fairy tales, and we're doing this with my daughter as well. We've been buying these really nicely illustrated fairy tale books, and it's great. She's really into it.
Does it really captivate them? I mean, a lot of times the stuff from our childhood, I wonder if it captivates them.
The Little Mermaid, we read her the book first, and she was incredibly into it. And then we decided, we're going to show her the movie. She has now seen the movie 4 times. And just cannot get enough of it. Mermaid, she's obsessed with mermaids. She wants to be a mermaid. She'll take her clothes off and run around and say, "I'm a mermaid." It's unbelievably adorable. And then the aforementioned Equestria Girls. If you are a huge fan of Friendship Games, well, it is also out now in its own Blu-ray DVD combo set. So what I mentioned before is all DVD. This is Friendship Games in a Blu-ray set. If you really, really have just a lot of free time on your hands. I'm going to try to turn this up and go a little bit faster. The Peanut stuff is coming out fast and furious now. He's a Bully, Charlie Brown, along with It Was a Short Summer, Charlie Brown, remastered. These are minor Charlie Brown specials, but they are throwing them out now because... Tim, this week we see
Peanuts. I got to see it for the Film Week show that you and I.
Yes. Are you you're on Friday?
I'm on this coming Friday, November the 6th.
Are you seeing the morning show, the morning screening, or the evening screening?
I'm seeing the morning screening for Peanuts because
Okay.
there are a lot of movies this week.
Yeah.
We have Spectre and we have Spotlight. Big movies. We're in that time
Yeah.
of year. That Peanuts movie right there, though, that cartoon.
Yeah.
Taylor, he's a bully. Taylor Lautner.
Oh, really?
The great Taylor plays the voice. Is the voice of the
grief.
bully in that one. So there you go.
Well,
Don't know if he'll be showing up in the Peanuts movie. I'm not excited about the Peanuts feature film.
Well, I'm RSVP'd for that same morning screening.
Okay.
Only if we can get the little one out of here in time.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see.
Is it the kind of thing you would bring her to?
We're not sure yet. She hasn't really responded. We tried to show her It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, on Halloween morning, to sort of get her into the spirit of things. Now, her exposure to feature films is very narrow so far. She only watches things like Peppa Pig and Mickey Mouse Clubhouse.
I heard her enjoyment of that earlier.
Yeah, and Downton Abbey for some reason, whatever reason. No, she loves Shaun the Sheep. And we took her to the Shaun the Sheep movie. That was her first movie, and she wound up seeing that 3 times in the theater. And that's all she has seen in the theater. Almost got her to sit through Paddington, but she was a lot younger at the time. But so I'm not sure if she sort of understands who Peanuts are. Lucy and Linus and Snoopy and Charlie Brown. She sort of gets that a little bit, but I'm not sure if she gets it enough. So we'll see if we can get her there and get her to sit through it.
It'll be interesting.
But see that also. We were watching the Great Pumpkin, and here's something that I always consider is innocuous. It's the most innocuous thing in the world. And next thing you know, Lucy's screaming, "You blockhead! You stupid!"
Oh, yeah.
And we're looking at each other, we're like, we don't really want her learning these words.
in that particular sort of
yeah, because the first person she's going to call a blockhead is me. That's not right.
Charlie Brown.
My daughter adores Elmo. That's one of the earlier obsessions. And we have a new Elmo here. Elmo Can Do It. Of course, this is just a few episodes of Elmo from Sesame Street, which has a variety of different Elmo adventures. There's Elmo the Musical and Elmo's World and all that stuff. This is Elmo and Abby, calm down and think. Help Obots. This is just Elmo teaching you things. So.
Yeah, he can write. He can change his name. He can spell his name. He can dance. Elmo can do it.
Tim, you got to help me understand why this even exists.
Mike Tyson with the big Maori tattoo in cartoon form.
It is unbelievable how Mike Tyson has merchandised himself after his disappearance from professional boxing. This is Mike Tyson Mysteries, Season 1, Uncensored. Now,
what does that mean? What's going to happen? Is he going to beat up Robin Givens? What's going to happen?
I have no idea. But it is... I'm not quite sure what's uncensored about this, but in any case...
A couple of neat voices. You got the great Norm Macdonald doing a voice in that thing. That's got to be funny.
Norm Macdonald is always funny. I've actually seen Norm Macdonald on a panel live. It was very, very funny. It was insanely funny. I'm trying to remember. There was a classic old writer from like Our Show of Shows. I can't remember who the guy was. But, he really kind of hated all of modern comedy, and Norm kept getting on his nerves. Kept interrupting him, repeating what he was saying. And he sort of didn't understand. Like, we're on a panel. This is a serious panel. But to Norm, it's a chance to perform.
It's just another...
He's on stage. There's an audience. It doesn't matter.
I'm a comic. You shouldn't hire me.
Anyway, so this is the Mike Tyson Mysteries, Season 1. It's sort of like Scooby-Doo, except with Mike Tyson. To be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, it's an Adult Swim thing, which tells you that they definitely aren't taking themselves seriously. But there are 10 episodes here, and it's Mike Tyson doing his own voice, which nobody can do that voice like Mike Tyson except maybe Jamie Foxx.
Yeah, I don't know.
Bubble Guppy's Great Guppy gift set. This includes a coloring book and crayons and a poster and a sticker sheet. And we like Bubble Guppies here. My daughter likes Bubble Guppies because they're mermaids. Yeah, I didn't realize that until a certain point. They sing and they have cute little tunes. Transformers, just too many Transformers shows for me to keep track of. This is from Cartoon Network. Transformers Robots in Disguise, a new Autobot mission. Actually, it's better than
the Michael Bay film.
Better than Michael Bay film and better than the Transformers I grew up on,
Yeah.
but still, not anything of any great significance. This is an interesting little thing. It's an animated musical comedy called Enough Already. And this is from Sisu, which releases the Jewish-themed Hebrew language stuff. And this is actually really, really wonderful. This is it's sort of Fiddler on the Roof-ish, to be honest. But I would say you don't have to be Jewish. You don't have to be Israeli or anything of the sort to actually enjoy this, just like with
You don't have to be, but it should. No. Hey, look, the title is Enough Already. You have to say it like that. Enough already?
Yeah. Anyway, there's some great klezmer music songs in here. It's really quite wonderful. And it's kind of a... Oh, how would you put it? It's based on a folk tale about a farmer and how he sort of the role of animals in this sort of I don't want to say it's like a Noah's Ark kind of a thing because it's not, but there's sort of a message to it. It's kind of like an Aesop's Fable deal, but it's actually very, very sweet and very nicely animated. So Enough Already. Too bad Mark wasn't here. I'm sure he would have had a wonderfully snarky Jewish thing to say about that. Yeah. Scholastic also has this series, The Magic School Bus, out now in season 4. I watched a few of these originally, and this is a 2-disc set, which is perfectly fine. I think I don't know why this thing went for 4 seasons and beyond, but it obviously has a following. PBS Kids, Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, not one of my favorite PBS shows, but my daughter does seem to like it. This is one of those things that was produced by Fred Rogers and his company before he passed. Continues to be popular. Hanna-Barbera Classic Collection. This is a DVD-R from the Warner Archive line. This is Jack and the Beanstalk, and this is actually a feature film with Gene Kelly. It is amazing, but it is
that is a beautiful movie.
Yes, it's 51 minutes long, so it's not technically a feature film, but it is a feature. It is like a television special feature from a certain day, and it's lovely. It's absolutely wonderful.
Classic Hanna-Barbera.
Classic Hanna-Barbera. It was absolutely magical and really very, very just engaging, and it still is. And the musical numbers are great, and the animation is terrific, and it's one of the most interesting things that Hanna-Barbera has ever done, and anything with Gene Kelly is worthwhile.
Yeah.
Let's see, but I'm going to burn through the rest of this Nickelodeon stuff here real quickly. Just a second. Let me...
Just make sure you don't skip those Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
I know you.
I have a particular affection for those.
Well, here I'll let you discuss that then.
You got Cowabunga Christmas, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Cowabunga Christmas. Look. These cartoons, this entire series of animation and live action films, which made a bit of a comeback a couple of years ago because they did was always a lot of fun to me. The animation was never particularly fantastic, but the storylines were neat.
Yeah,
and the characters are great.
Yeah,
it's all so psychedelic. When you and I were really young kids, we had this kind of stuff in live action. The Sid and Marty Krofft would create live action sort of insane characters that were like these characters.
And by the way,
Nickelodeon.
You realize they are also going to do they're working on an H.R. Puff and Stuff feature film.
I think that is just extraordinary. That is extraordinary. Unless they go CGI. See, that's what worries me.
They're not.
It's a practical effects movie.
Apparently, Sid, or is it Marty? One of them gave an interview recently and said they learned their lesson from Land of the Lost.
Very good.
Yeah. They realized everything they did wrong there, and they're not going to do it again.
No, do them the way you did them in 1972.
Exactly.
That's what you do.
And
the other one, of course, was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The first and second complete seasons of that television program we were talking about.
Brilliant.
Good stuff.
And then the rest of the Nickelodeon stuff, Adventures of SpongeBob SquarePants, which includes the entire collection of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy's adventures. So, I can't really recommend this because this show's gotten on my nerves for years, but I'm just letting you know it's there. Puppy Palooza is a Nickelodeon compilation. They do a lot of these. If you just want like keep your kid busy with a variety selection from various shows, Dora and Team Umizoomi.
What's
Blue's
the age
Clues.
range for a lot of this stuff?
This is like
Nickelodeon
not
stuff.
more than 4.
Okay.
Yeah, not more than 4. I mean, unless it's the Turtles, which is skews a little older. But for something like that, Dora, I think by the time you're 5, you're out of it. Paw Patrol, Meet Everest. Dogs, animated dogs. They're always good for a laugh. And then a thing here, Science and Wordplay, which includes Blaze and the Monster Machines and Wally Kazam. Another kind of double disc compilation set of those 2 shows, which are primarily aimed at boys. Very educational, but girls, at least not my daughter, don't get into it too much. The last few here, Transformers Rescue Bots, Dinobots. If you're into dinosaurs and Transformers, that's kind of creepy. The complete collection of Madeline, which is wonderful. The Madeline books are just fantastic. My daughter loves the original Madeline, can't get enough of it. And the animated show is also really sweet. Stays very faithful. It's a little more polished in the artwork, but it's very true to the adventures of this little schoolgirl in Paris, and it's just beautiful. So that's now out thanks to Mill Creek.
Lovely. Also
from Mill Creek, complete series of A Bunch of Munch. Never heard of this before. This is 13 animated adoptions from animated adaptations of stories by author Robert Munch. I never heard of any of these. After watching a few of them, can't say that I'm all that excited about them. I can see why people are really into this stuff, but it's a little precious for me, to be honest. And another one from the same line of Mill Creek is The Country Mouse and the City Mouse Adventures. Another one I've never heard of, but 26 adventures here. Really, really sweet. This I thought was lovely. This is really cool vintage animation from probably I guess this is about the late 70s, early 80s or so, maybe even older. Anyway, that's charming. Barbie is not charming. Barbie in Rock and Royals is the last thing I would ever want to show to a daughter. There's no way.
Barbie has become a bit of an issue
over
the years.
Rock and Royals, not getting into that. Scholastic Storybook Treasures also gives us Nelson Mandela and more inspiring stories. These are 4 stories with narration by the likes of Forrest Whitaker and Felicia Rashad.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Great animation. Completely unusual and just really, really great. This includes Nelson Mandela, an animated story of Nelson Mandela's life. And then 3 other stories similar to that, Each Kindness, Mufaro's Beautiful Daughters, and Coretta Scott, which is obviously about Coretta Scott King. Really lovely stuff. Really, really lovely stuff. Beautifully done. A really interesting kind of animation. It's very sort of true to life, very crayon-like. More Transformers and Transformers Prime, Ultimate Decepticons. This is brutal. This is just way too violent even for me. I can't keep track of all the Transformers series. Talked earlier about Thomas and Friends, the little train guy. This is a new Thomas and Friends movie, the Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure. Thomas and Friends has a problem with syncing the lips to the dialogue, and I'm not, I'll leave it at that. And then Play All Day with Elmo, 2 hours more of Elmo, as if the other one wasn't enough. Letter Factory, The Great Shape Mystery. These are what turtles do when they're not being mutant ninjas. And the last 2, Pups United, with Rob Schneider doing some pretty great voice work. This is, just soccer playing dogs. And I love soccer, not too keen on soccer playing dogs, but it's all.
How I feel about anthropomorphication.
This is what we got out of Air Bud. That's what Air Bud created. And then lastly, from the Beginner's Bible series, little animated Bible stories. Joseph and his brothers, Daniel and Lion's Den, the Battle of Jericho, and Jonah and the Whale. And the animation makes a lot of these things more palpable because you know what? Daniel and Lion's Den, story of Jericho, there's some violent stuff here.
Yeah, so, depends on whether your religious education is important, but maybe
softening the blow. Softening the blow. All right, Tim. Thank you for tolerating that.
Good stuff in there. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
So let's get into some new movies. What should we start with?
Let's see. Look, let's talk about Vacation. You and I actually talked about that movie a few weeks ago on Film Week.
We did,
and we had a pretty good time with it. This was not a very good adaptation of this film.
It's a horrendous movie.
But what it did do for me is it reminded me to go out and look up those other vacation movies, which I found. I mean, remembering that Johnny Galecki played one of the kids, and I think Michael Anthony Hall played one of the kids.
Yeah.
What can I say about this movie? Christina Applegate is working her ass off.
She kind of makes the movie.
You know, she's working so hard to save this thing. She doesn't face. Yeah, Ed Helm.
Yeah, he's terrible.
You know, Chevy Chase shows up. Beverly D'Angelo shows up.
Oh, Chevy looks so bad.
But no, this one didn't quite pull together. This has some special features on Return to Wally World, the Griswold Odyssey, a gag reel, and some deleted scenes.
Yeah, it tanked too. I mean, it's a really, really unfortunate waste of capital to have made this movie. I'm sorry they made it.
It's a very Hollywood thing to do, to reach back into the archives.
But it's
30 years.
It thinks that it's being cute. You know, they have sort of little double entendres like, oh, well, that can't possibly be as good as the first Vacation. And, ha ha, ho ho, that's funny. I get it, but you know what? You're calling my attention to the fact that you're lame.
Yeah.
And Ed Helms is not a star.
You're not disarming me. I remember when that guy was in commercials.
Yeah. Anyway, Tomorrowland was a kind of a hotly anticipated Disney film until it wasn't. Here's the thing about Tomorrowland, and I'll leave it at this. Tomorrowland should have been really interesting, but Damon Lindelof was involved, and Lindelof is one of those screenwriters who overcomplicates and overwrites, and he creates these.
He insinuates all of these sort of subtext and themes into
too
things.
Much.
And frankly, when you add that to a director like Brad Bird, who's a wonderful director who I enjoy quite a lot, but also likes layer upon layer of innuendo and things like that. And by the time you get look. It's just a movie about it's Tomorrowland. It's okay. Relax, guys.
Yeah, it's about this imaginary. Well, this I wouldn't even call it imaginary. Where the special kids go. It's sort of. I mean, it's an endearing fantasy concept, but the execution here. It gets get ahead of itself. It runs away from itself, and it's convoluted. And George Clooney just kind of feels miscast. And the interesting thing is, nobody knew what this movie was about from the marketing.
Yeah,
they had that wonderful trailer with George Clooney narrating it, and it just sounded ethereal and magical.
And it seemed like a much lighter movie than it actually is.
And I actually appreciated those trailers because I thought, well, I like that they're not telling me what it's about. I'm going to be surprised. Of course, the cynic in me should have kicked in at that point and said, but studios aren't...
They don't do that.
They don't do that. If no one at the studio is saying, let's be good to the audience for change and not let them know what it's about just as a courtesy. No, if a studio is not telling you what a movie's about in the trailer... It's because they're afraid of telling it. Yeah. I should have. My warning bells should have gone off. But anyway,
this movie was saved by Fantastic Four when it came out because everybody forgot that this was probably the worst film of the early part of the year.
Oh man. Yeah. Well, anyway, it's a Blu-ray, DVD, and digital HD combo set. The digital HD, of course, is Disney Movies Anywhere, which is their version of Ultraviolet, which is a much better implementation of the same idea. And a lot of bonus features here, little documentaries and featurettes and fun stuff. And there's even a great thing, the World of Tomorrow's Science Hour, which is hosted by David Nix, who's a futurologist. I don't even know if that's a real word.
I'm pretty sure it's not.
But this is outtakes from a long-lost Disney series pilot, which I thought was really interesting. Yeah. And Disney keeps trying to turn everything on the theme park into a movie, and every movie into a theme park,
right? And make all of it merchandising.
And I'll tell you an interesting thing. I have two screenwriter friends, who both actually went in to pitch for a Disney film, an assignment based on a ride, based on an attraction. I will leave that attraction unnamed, but both of them, I remember hearing essentially the same thing from them, which is, I don't even know why I was pitching this because it doesn't make sense. Yeah. There's nothing about this that makes any sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's what they're trying to do, and that has not happened, of course. Let's see what else we got here. Southpaw.
Let's talk about the boxing film.
Yeah.
Jake. Yeah.
Southpaw may resurrect itself at awards time.
You think?
Harvey was talking it up pretty big. He's done this before. He'll talk something up to see if, it's kind of like a trial balloon to see if he can float something. And he was talking up Jake Gyllenhaal for a Best Actor nomination.
Look, Jake Gyllenhaal, you got Kirk Sutter writing Sons of Anarchy and all that kind of stuff there, and Antoine Fuqua directing this film. That should have all added up to a better movie.
I would agree.
In my opinion, it's not that it's a bad movie in any way whatsoever. It's a very familiar story that doesn't really tread any new territory, and that's a lot of firepower to make such an ordinary film.
I thought the father-daughter dynamic was something. Again, it's the champ, right? We've seen we've seen that sort of thing in boxing movies before. But I didn't think with this kind of grit. I mean, I appreciated the grit. I appreciated that I actually believed that he's a boxer and that he came from the background he came from. But yeah, I mean, it should have been a better movie. Forrest Whitaker basically Forrest Whitaker basically plays from Rocky.
Not the guy that
Penguin.
the Penguin. Burgess Meredith's character, the standing back there.
Yeah,
which is interesting when we think about this in juxtaposition to the upcoming Creed.
Yes.
Michael B. Jordan.
And Rocky basically now taking over that part.
Yeah, because that movie now feels like it's going to be the sort of big Hollywood version of what this more indie sort of film.
Have you seen the new trailer for Creed?
Yeah, actually, the new trailer for Creed brought me around on it.
It did
because I was not. You know me. I was not happy about this.
Let's talk about that for a second because I think we've all had the same experience with the Rocky franchise, which is everybody loved Rocky, the original Rocky. I loved it at the time. Don't love it so much now. And then when there's a Rocky 2, everybody's like, "Oh, but really?" Because the ending of Rocky, he loses, and I know that he's going to win.
Yeah.
You're gonna give me what you didn't want to give me before, and that's
which was kind of sophisticated, actually.
Which was very sophisticated
to create a champion out of the guy that lost a fight.
But then Rocky 2 sort of it basically scratches the itch that the first one was so famous for not scratching. So it's like, why did you do that? Why? And but it's interesting because then Rocky 2 actually winds up being, apart from the predictability of it, a pretty compelling narrative. I mean, Creed still doesn't feel like he won because he didn't defeat his spirit. I mean, there's a very interesting dynamic.
And of course, you have the sort of, I suppose everybody's seen the movie, but you mentioned Burgess Meredith and what happens with him in the movie and all of that, which is a dramatic flourish that was sort of interesting. And then it manages to hang on and find another sort of pivotal dynamic with, because you got Clubber Lang.
Yeah. That's Rocky 3.
Rocky, and I'm like, okay, and then the big Russian dude,
Rocky 4, which is just off the wall ridiculous.
Rocky, whatever he hits, he kills.
But what's interesting now, and all the other Rocky movies that came after Rocky 4,
Tommy Gunn and all that.
There another 2 or 3 in there that just are sort of don't really even
long since lost a thread.
Long since, but it's interesting that Rocky 4, which is the one that everyone ridicules because it is so, I will break you. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. Dolph Lundgren, the whole thing, James Brown living in America. I mean, it really is over the top. But isn't it interesting that that's the one that now dovetails into Creed?
Yeah, interesting.
And I find that interesting because that first trailer for Creed, I watched it and I thought, oh, no, please don't do this. You guys, the Fruitvale Station was such a gem. I wanted you to move, into something not sideways into this the Rocky. No, don't do that. And I was so not on board. And then this latest trailer totally brought me around.
Visually, but also narratively.
Yeah.
They don't give up a whole lot of information on it. But it's on a narrative arc that I found a little bit more compelling,
much more interesting.
So it'll be. You and I talked about the Michael B. and that kind of thing because I understand it, and I understand it. Look, first movie, nobody made any money.
No,
time to get paid.
Yeah,
get paid. Because you're going to get paid. You make this movie with Sylvester Stallone. If the movie is successful, then you've made your career.
Yeah.
If the movie fails, well, then you've paid your mortgage.
Yeah.
Off for a while, and then you figure out the rest of your career. You probably make a Netflix movie.
And I think it's going to be a very good thing. Obviously, Michael B. Jordan did. He had no idea that Fantastic Four was going to tank.
Yeah.
But I think, given how badly that tanked, he's got to be grateful, at
Yeah.
least if we hope that this film turns out as it does, because this will put his career right back to where it needs to be.
And it's really what he needed, you know. So we shall see. But
So, all right, Z for Zachariah.
yeah.
Interesting film. As far as post-apocalyptic movies go, this is definitely an unusual one. It's a three-hander. It's basically only three characters. Chiwetel Ejiofor, Margot Robbie, and Chris Pine. It takes place after some kind of a nuclear apocalypse. And Margot Robbie is the daughter of a preacher in a small village in a canyon, and this valley has survived for whatever reason. And she continues to sort of, her brother and her parents went away to help people, but she has survived, and she's sort of living alone there, just sustaining herself with whatever she has left in the village. And suddenly, Chiwetel Ejiofor shows up. He's a scientist. He's been wandering around in a radiation suit, and he was underground when everything hit. And he's amazed to find this canyon.
An interesting film. Works in some fairly familiar territory. It becomes about a triangle.
And Chris Pine shows up, and he's
yeah.
kind of that dark character, and you're not sure, is he a good guy, is he a bad guy? She knows him from when they were kids. He was adjacent town, but there's a little sexual tension
and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Zobel, right, the director,
yeah.
made that really interesting little indie. This is the exact thing we were just talking about a moment ago. He made that little indie Compliance about those people working in the store, and they get the phone call, and they all sort of...
Which, based on a true story that I just cannot believe is true, because those people are the stupidest people on earth.
It's but you'd be very interested. And then the next thing out makes a nice big movie. Also, didn't do that well in the box.
It did not. It's a strange kind of small film, but it's big, but it's small. That's the thing. It's got some scale to it, but it's only three characters. But anyway, it's based on a novel, and you can tell that it probably works better as a novel. But that being said, I thought the performances were sharp. I really like what Margot Robbie's doing with her career. Chris Pine did not embarrass me, which is saying something. And Chewie he can do no wrong.
Yeah, he's going
the
to
guy can do no wrong. He's always good. So Z for Zechariah, an unusual post-apocalyptic movie as far as they're concerned. There's no Mad Max, no cars, no mutants, no war boys and all that nonsense.
Actually, I like Craig Zobel. He also made The Great World of Sound, which is really a fascinating...
Oh, that's right, he did, didn't he?
Yeah, that was him too. Yeah.
And then the Vatican tapes. Not much to say here. This was just another one of those movies that sort of tries to take Catholic lore and turn it into something horrific and weird and macabre. These pop up every so often, and you can't say that Catholic lore doesn't sort of lend itself to it. The Exorcist, of course, being the one that most obviously lit that fuse. This one is, middling. It's got a decent cast. Doug Ray Scott and Michael Pena are certainly decent actors. Olivia Taylor-Dudley.
Damen Hanju. Alison Lohman around there. I think she's married to Mark Nedvelde, if I'm not mistaken.
The director.
Yeah, I'm almost sure she's married to him. Knocked Out. One of those Crank movies was one of his movies a couple of years. Maybe the second or third Crank movie. So, one or two of them, maybe.
Anyway, you sort of know what you're getting if you're watching a movie called The Vatican Tapes.
Oh, The Gift here I see among The Gift was an absolutely fascinating little thriller. It's one of those "it's something going on" movies. There's something going on. There's a thing, and I got to tell you, it's an intense, dark little movie, and it smacks you at the end. And at the end of the movie, you may or may not know exactly what's going on. So it's very good. Jason Bateman, Rebecca Hall, of course, Joel Edgerton. Those Edgerton boys, those Australian boys, are in just about everything.
They are. It's amazing.
Some bonus features here on an alternate ending, which is absolutely fascinating because this movie is all about the ending. The ending is what makes it work, so I find it fascinating that you could have an alternate ending that could possibly still work. I mean, because the thing that makes this movie is the very last moment of the movie. So looking forward to that just for the alternate ending.
And then arguably the stinker of the summer. We have Pixels.
That movie. Oh, man. Well, Adam Sandler.
We wonder what Adam Sandler is doing now. He's in his 50s, and he keeps trying to be that guy, and I just keep hoping he'll just turn into a real actor and kind of give this up. This is a Blu-ray 3D, Blu-ray, digital HD, ultraviolet combo set. No DVD in here, just Blu-ray 3D, and a code for your ultraviolet. Really obnoxious lenticular cover to try to catch your eye.
It's not a lot of... Look, dude, this is a Chris Columbus film. Tim
Yeah.
O'Hurley wrote this movie.
Yeah,
Kevin James is also in it.
I know.
But it's the meanest. It's a mean movie. That's what I will say about that. I don't like this movie because it's a mean movie that doesn't like people and it does not like the characters.
No.
These beloved characters who we all love, and it turns them into these sort of psychotic monsters. In what world is that okay?
I have a theory about this, and it's unsubstantiated, and it may be wrong. But there's a if we go back to the moment in Ghostbusters where Dan Aykroyd conjures up the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, right? And it's the idea of something that was sweet and innocuous from his childhood that now manifests itself as an invading monster that he has to fight. I have a theory that moment sort of inspired this. That somebody said, hey, what if, all of our favorite video game characters come back as like alien creations, like they misinterpreted video game signals or whatever, and now they send them to attack us, and these Ghostbustery type guys, Adam Sandler, Peter Dinklage, Josh Gad, Kevin James, they get to do like a Ghostbuster thing. It'll be like the new Ghostbusters, a new franchise. We'll make 10 of them, and I'll make $1 billion. And you're right. It's a nasty movie. It's a stupid premise.
Yeah.
It's strictly for people who remember all of these games, Centipede and Space Invaders, which is our generation.
Yes.
Why would anybody think that our generation is going to run out and see Adam Sandler in this movie?
Yeah, particularly since we liked all of those games anyway. And if you are going to... I don't really want to see it.
Why would I want to watch this instead of Ghostbusters? Ghostbusters has Bill Murray.
Yeah, exactly.
And Dan Aykroyd.
Who's funny whether or not there's anything...
And Harold Ramis and Ernie Hudson. And and what's her name?
Ivan Reitman. So, dude, you got everybody is in there. It's just a fantastic. You got Sigourney Weaver.
Yeah, Sigourney Weaver.
I was thinking of Annie Potts.
Annie Potts. I
was kind of obsessed with Annie Potts.
I adore Annie Potts. Anyway, you also get a Pixels game app in this thing, which no one in their right mind is ever going to play. It's loaded up with extras and exclusives. On the creator of the machine and Space Invader and Pac-Man and Donkey Kong, and they get into all of I just don't see this doing any business. But whatever, they're obligated to send it out there. So Pixels, rent it if you want to just be amazed at how misbegotten this movie was. So let's see, Tim, why don't we? You know what? I'm going to make mention of another thing over here real quickly. This
stack there.
This stack right here. This is a thing from IndiePix. If you follow IndiePix is an indie label. They release movies theatrically and on DVD as well. And it's they're always really kind of very super low budget things, but their whole business model is that they give a chance to independent producers and independent directors and people whose movies might otherwise be really, really on the low end of the totem and not really have a shot. They give them a chance at getting their stuff out on DVD and in theaters. And they've released a number of titles over the years, but they've just done something really interesting. They've taken a whole bunch of these titles and they've packaged them into a boxed set so that you now, if you don't take any interest in any one of them in particular, you might watch all of these. And it is called the IndiePix Mix 10. And it's 10 titles. All My Friends Are Funeral Singers, Artois the Goat, which is actually really good. Yeah. Evergreen, The DeVilles, The Axe in the Attic, Front Runner, Echo Tone, Candyman, the David Klein story, and Jack Taylor of Beverly Hills, which is also a very interesting film. So these are all really, really low-end films. But they come now in this IndiePix Mix 10, which is a really, really interesting bunch of films. And it's very affordably priced, and I would recommend that people check this out so that they can sort of experience the far end of independent cinema and sort of see, what a lot of these guys do. These movies are really actually quite good for the small amount that they had and the resources. And
they range. Some of those movies, early '90s, mid '90s, early 2000s, mid 2000s, like that.
Tim, why don't we burn through some music? Music titles right now.
Well, we got a few things here. We got a few things here. As I pick them up off the floor, they fall off here. They might be kind of interesting. So we have Adamant, the Blue Black Hussar, which is a Jack Bond film. This is sort of an interesting movie. Charlotte Rampling, Mark Ronson, a music film behind the scenes kind of thing. Adam Ant is, an eclectic sort of acquired taste, I suppose. If you're into that sort of thing. But Mark Ronson is actually on this film talking about.
I still say "Goody Two Shoes" is the most monotonous, boring song ever written. I love Adam Ant, but honestly, "Goody Two Shoes," it's like 4 notes played over and over and over,
with about the same amount of
like 2 notes.
Amount of lyrics. I should think too.
Anyway.
2 Leonard Skinner DVDs here. One thing called Gone with the Wind, the remarkable rise and tragic fall of Leonard Skinner kind of speaks to it right there in the title. Leonard Skinner popped on the scene in about 1993. At the beginning of that whole sort of country rock, country soul kind of scene there.
Yeah.
And sort of burned its way into the zeitgeist of the day. This is a long, long, long documentary, 163 minutes long. The other one is Leonard Skinner, which is an interesting thing, live from Jacksonville, Florida. I don't remember exactly when this concert was. I think this was sometime in the late 90s, if I'm not mistaken. But this is simply for fans of Leonard Skinner. If that's what you're doing, you're gonna love that a whole lot.
And I got a bunch of classical stuff here that we get from Naxos. Naxos is a premier classical DVD and Blu-ray company. Mark always rips on me because I always share the opera titles because our fans are fans of opera, whether you realize it or not. You are. Anyway,
which is actually so true.
Yeah. No, we've got a number of really, really cool titles here, starting with Vivaldi. Il Farnace. This is from where was this performed? This is the Orchestra Maggio Musicale Fiorentino. So this is an Italian performance. We also have Leos Janáček, Janufa from the Berlin Deutsche Opera. Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake for ballet fans.
Is that the one from the early 80s? That particular one, or
Swan Lake?
That's Swan Lake. Yeah.
No, this Swan Lake. This is a new Swan Lake.
Oh, okay.
This is a new performance of Swan Lake, done at the Royal Opera House with the Royal Ballet. This is a British performance. Absolutely beautiful. You can do no wrong with Swan Lake. There have been a lot of kind of avant-garde Swan Lakes over the years. Everybody keeps trying to reinvent it.
Yeah.
But this is actually really, really quite good. La Belle Hélène is an Offenbach opera. Very modern, very cool, very, very, very slick. If you don't like opera, that might be your bag. Mark's going to laugh when he finds out we talked about opera. He's going to be just so grateful that he wasn't here. La Lesiana by Francesco Cilea. I'm not familiar with the composer or anyone to do with it. Didn't find it all that compelling.
Showboat.
Showboat with the San Francisco Opera. Showboat, of course, is not an opera; it is an operetta, and it is just magnificent. I saw Showboat when they had it before they tore down the Schubert Theater here.
Oh, yeah.
They had a revival of Showboat here, and it was absolutely spectacular. It's just it's an unbelievable performance. It's an unbelievable show. And the thing is, you whenever you put on Showboat, it is an invitation to find an absolutely amazing singer to sing Old Man River.
Yeah.
Because it's such a great piece of music. You just anyone out there who is, if you're the greatest singer of your generation, come on down.
And it doesn't have to be a baritone either, doesn't it?
No.
I heard a tenor version of that. It was just exquisite.
Absolutely beautiful. So this is a production with the San Francisco Opera. It is absolutely wonderful. You can do no wrong with Showboat. And then Tannhauser.
Oh, the Wagner.
If you're a Wagner fan, this is pretty great. The nice thing about opera, I have actually seen Wagnerian opera live. For one of my birthdays many years ago, my wife took me to see Tristan and Isolde, which, for those of you who don't know, it's like 11 hours long.
Yeah.
And I'm not joking. It is literally like 11 hours long. There's a lunch break. You go for I think it's probably more like 8 hours, but in any case, you sit there for about 4 hours reading subtitles and listening to it and just sweating and thinking, is this ever going to end? And then you go out for lunch, and then you come back in another 4 hours, and then you go home and go to bed. That's how it is.
It's not the James Franco film, folks.
It's not.
With Kevin Reynolds, not that.
No. So anyway, this is Tannhauser. It's not as overbearing, but it's pretty intense. So at least at home, you can put it on pause and pick it up the next day, and do whatever you need to do. Franz Schubert, Fierabras is really a beautiful production. This is staged by Peter Stein, who's who's like a big deal in the world of opera, and this is very impressively put together. It's not exactly something that anybody is, most of our listeners probably aren't familiar with, but look up Fierabras, 2 R's, Fierabras. It's really cool production design. And then the World Orchestra for Peace at the BBC, Mahler's Symphonies 4 and 5, beautiful, beautiful performances of 2 amazing symphonies. Handel's Rinaldo in a Blu-ray and double CD edition, also very, very impressive. And then the last few titles here, let me get to these real quickly. Madrigal History Tour with the King's Singers is beautiful. This is I was never familiar with the King's Singers before, but it's a beautiful singing ensemble, and they do classical, they do Beatles, they do all kinds of stuff. It's just they're sort of all over the map. And then Rossini's Aureliano in Palmyra, and Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart's Don Giovanni.
Oh, Don Giovanni.
Yeah, those are beautiful new additions. And then lastly, opening gala concert, a John Williams celebration. This is great. This is a Los Angeles Philharmonic Walt Disney Concert Hall performance of a bunch of John Williams.
So all the great scores.
All the great stuff. Star Wars, E.T., Amistad, Schindler's List, Fiddler on the Roof. People forget he won an Oscar for the adapted score for Fiddler on the Roof. Yeah. That's how far back he goes. So that's great. And the Disney Concert Hall, which I know you've covered many, many times.
Yes, extraordinary.
Incredible acoustics.
Yes,
amazing.
Perfect for recording.
Yeah. So there is that. So Mark is spared another month and a half.
The operas are covered. Mark, relax. You're good.
Operas are covered. Let's see. We got some. You know what? Let's Tim. Let's do some docs, and then we'll get into some classic movies.
Okay.
There are some really interesting docs here. One that makes me a little bit uncomfortable. It's gotten a lot of traction. This was an Emmy-nominated doc, and I don't know if it's even Oscar. It might be Oscar eligible as well. I'm not quite clear on the eligibility overlap between Emmys and Oscars, but we'll see. It's Going Clear: Scientology and the Prison of Belief. The reason I'm a little uncomfortable about this is I'm always uncomfortable with things that feel like hatchet pieces. And, Scientology has become everybody's whipping boy of late, ever since Tom Cruise went and jumped on Oprah's couch and made everybody think...
not to mention that movie Going Clear, that doc Going Clear.
Well, that's
the one we're talking about. I didn't realize that what we were talking about. So, absolutely interesting.
Yeah.
And actually sort of changed the sort of public perception.
And the thing is, nobody from Scientology was willing to go on the record to sort of represent their side of this. And I'm not sure how I feel about that, because it winds up making the film feel very one-sided and polemical. But on the other side, if I knew somebody was doing a hatchet piece on me, I'm not sure I'd cooperate.
Well, Scientology has always been very protective and actually kind of aggressive about anything to do with them. I mean, back in the 90s, they would sue pretty much anyone that said anything. And most recently in the news, news about Leah Remini and...
Yeah. See, that Leah Remini 2020 interview really... And then Kirstie Alley came out with a statement. It just continues to be a thing in the news, and it just, it's... Anyway, Going Clear, very, very controversial doc, but it is, as long as you understand it's one-sided, it is very interesting. And it certainly raises a lot of interesting questions and a lot of very ethical issues there. So we'll see how it eventually shakes out. I have a feeling it's going to be one of many documentaries about Scientology over the years.
And I'm not sure it's going to make any difference.
Probably doesn't.
Jamil Shabazz, street photographer. This is very interesting. Jamil Shabazz. Most recently, I think a documentary called Through the Lens Darkly was one of his films. Very, very good film. He's known for several things, Everybody on the Street. This one is called Street Photographer. It's just wonderful, wonderful documentary about him and his photography, which goes back some 20, 25-odd years, mostly of young African-American folks in urban environments, various different places around the world, doing what they do, capturing the life of young black folks in the world. Very good. Charlie Ahern directed the film.
Great. I've seen a few. I've seen some of Shabazz's stuff. Not enough actually, but I love street photographers.
It's just it's going back for decades.
Because Stanley Kubrick was originally a street photographer.
Yeah, exactly.
For Look magazine. Martha Davis and the Motels at the Motels Live at the Whiskey A Go Go 50th anniversary special. We could have included this in the music segment, but it almost feels more like it belongs with the docs, because there is a there's a I don't know. It's it was an interesting performance. This is about a year and a half ago that they did this. I think this was early 2014. But you get basically the motels started their career. They started their at the Whiskey a Go Go, and people forget what the Whiskey a Go Go originally was. If you're in Los Angeles, the Whiskey a Go Go is kind of one of the premier performance places on the Sunset Strip, but it originally was a go-go place. There were girls in cages.
Girls in cages dancing in patent leather boots.
Yeah, exactly. The whole deal. I mean, that's what it was
that whole
originally.
Strip right there, Gazzara's and the whiskey and the rainbow and all that stuff.
It's just it's a fascinating history, and it's probably a little about like what's the place in New York that plays CBGB's, which originally was supposed to be, if you saw the film with Alan Rickman, which is great, that was originally supposed to be CBGB was country blues, right? He had
that's what it actually is.
That's what it meant. He had a whole plan for the music that was going to be there, and of course that never panned out.
No,
but instead he wound up
punk club.
It's where
I played on that stage once.
Blondie and Iggy Pop, and it suddenly it just
the police.
Police. He inadvertently launched an entirely different music scene. So anyway, this is a 50th anniversary performance by Martha Davis and the Motels, and of course a lot of us, I am of the generation that grew up sort of at the end of the Motels, Only the Lonely and stuff like that. But there's a whole catalog of music that predates that, and she is just she's indefatigable. She really is great. Martha Davis, she knows how old she is. She owns it. She jokes about it on stage, and a lot of great tunes. It's really nice. So that's a great Blu-ray.
Here's a fun documentary. It's actually a series that ran from about 2002. James Bond Gadgets. Which is all about that exactly. All of the different toys that popped up in James Bond movies over the course of the last 50 years? What are we, 50 years of James Bond now?
Yeah, 50 years.
A lot of fun there. This was 40, 45 episodes worth of stuff on James Bond gadgets.
Love the gadgets. People watch the thing just for the gadgets.
Well, some of the stuff is kind of fun because a lot of it was really sort of conceptual and came into being. Little gas powered, operated fountain pens that you can kill people with. Vladimir Putin probably enjoys most of that stuff.
I'm sure a lot of the spy agencies of the world watch James Bond movies to get new ideas.
Hey, we have one of those?
That would come in handy. Joe Strummer on the Run in I Need a Dodge. This is a Nick Hall documentary that looks basically at the life of Joe Strummer. I am not a Joe Strummer fan, I should say, but this begins with an interview from 1997 of Joe Strummer on the radio, and gets into. It's a very interesting. It's a very weird kind of offbeat specific documentary, which deals with specifically a lost car, and I won't tell you any more than that, but if you think, wait a minute, the guy from The Clash and he lost a car and they made a documentary about it, it makes sense. It kind of comes together. So you just gotta trust me on that. It does make sense. It's worth watching, I think, only if you're a Clash fan, only if you sort of get the understand the context. But it's interesting.
One of the really great ones that we have here that I really can't wait to recommend people go see is Best of Enemies.
We talked about this on the radio.
Yeah, absolutely. Buckley versus Vidal, the 1968 Democratic convention.
Convention, yes.
And I believe it was the ABC network that couldn't quite muster the funds to cover the convention properly.
They couldn't. ABC was they were third. They were well below CBS and NBC, and they were doing anything they could to sort of resurrect their news operation
to create a news
operation and be legit. And they came up with sort of what would be a reality television idea today. And they said, hey, let's get the most conservative guy in America, William F. Buckley, and let's get the most rabid left-wing guy in America, Gore Vidal, and let's just basically put them into an intellectual cage match on television and let the cameras roll.
And let these guys go at it. And they, in fact, went at it, didn't they?
And they did. And it wound up being a series of televised debates that is legendary to this day, because these two guys are just both intellectual giants and hopelessly narcissistic blowhards.
Yeah.
And when you combine all of that in these volatile settings, and there's a moment where it goes off the cliff.
Well,
a famous
Buckley
television
says
moment.
something that you can't say say on television that he said out loud anyway.
And Gore Vidal came back just relentlessly, and it is a fascinating look at a certain piece of history, and really you can trace reality television to this moment.
Robert Gordon and Morgan Neville. Morgan Neville, I think, one of the directors, 20 Feet from Stardom.
Yep.
If I'm not mistaken,
it's a superb film.
It's just really, particularly when you look back at this stuff from in hindsight, from our perch now, we can see how that all played out. Both of those guys are dead now.
Yeah.
And it is ironic, it's sort of irrelevant who won those debates, but it is interesting who won the actual culture wars.
No one is going. Yes, it is. It's interesting to see sort of who was ahead of what curve in this thing, and no one who watches this today is going to be persuaded. I mean, if you're on the left or you're on the right, you're going to watch it and you're going to feel completely validated by your guy, and you're going to hate the other guy. So it's not going to win any converts. But what it is interesting is that at a certain point, and it's sort of that one pivotal moment, Gore Vidal has always realized, because he has a Hollywood background, he's always realized that they're putting on a show. They're performing.
He was always just entertaining.
He was always
sincere
aware of the camera.
about his perspectives and point. They both were, but he understood what they were actually doing.
He understood that there was a camera and an audience and its performance, because he understood that at any given moment, if the people are not entertained, they're going to switch over to Bonanza or something else, or CBS or NBC. He got it. Buckley never, it wasn't until Gore Vidal essentially said so to his face that Buckley realized, oh, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, this is a show.
But then Gore Vidal was never able to keep that going. Buckley's the one who then went on with Firing Line and basically capitalized on that. So in many respects, you could even say that Buckley owes Gore Vidal
that last
part of his
35, 40 years of his career. Yeah. Otherwise, he would have just been writing a new report.
Fascinating. Fascinating.
Very interesting stuff.
Yes.
Best of Enemies.
Yes.
That one is. Matthew Shepard is a friend of mine's. Which is just a lovely movie about Matthew Shepard, who, of course, we know was murdered.
Such a horrible event.
In the years since his death, of course, much has happened in the world of gay rights, and we've moved,
especially this year.
Yeah, especially this year. So this is a chilling just reminder of how far we've come and how important it was to try to get there.
We've been talking about video games today, and we have Pixels just gets on your nerves. But this is interesting. This is an Xbox Originals documentary. Atari Game Over. The Hunt is On. Should probably have been better. I wish they'd have spent a little bit more money on this. But the idea here is that there's this urban legend about this thing called the Great Video Game Burial of 1983. And it's the most ridiculous thing in the world. But basically what it says is that as the legend goes, that because the E.T. video game was such a catastrophe and such a failure that millions of cartridges for the Atari game system simply were never sold. They were just disposed of and buried somewhere in the New Mexico desert. And a lot of video game fans actually believe that this is true and that they can go and find them and unearth them somewhere. So these buried E.T. video games become this weird holy grail. It's very strange and disturbing and weird and eccentric. And it's a good doc, but it ought to be better. There should have been a little bit more money and resource and polish put into it. But as it is, certainly if urban legend, weird video game movies appeal to you, I think you'll probably enjoy something in it.
That is an interesting sort of urban legend,
it's
about
weird.
these,
I don't how that even gets started. It just anyway. Everything Counts, One Cut, One Life. This is a film by Lucia Small and Ed Pincus, two kind of legends of documentary filmmaking, especially Ed Pincus. One Cut, One Life. This is from First Run. And they've made films together before, but this is very different because it's about them. Ed Pincus comes down with terminal cancer, and he solicits Lucia Small, with whom he hasn't worked for many years, to essentially film him, to capture this part of his life, this segment of his life. And it creates tension with his wife, and it creates kind of an interesting variation on the films, on the first person sort of you were in the room with them documentaries that they were famous for making, the just fly on the wall documentaries. I don't think it's necessarily a great doc, but given the stature of the people who made it, if you are a fan of their earlier work, this is definitely the bookend to it, and it is important to watch. Some interesting extras here, including panel discussions and filmmaker interview and some deleted scenes.
I have one here, The Girls in the Band. This is a documentary that's a very interesting thing, particularly if you happen to come from something of a musical background. So, and from the 20s, really, actually the teens, straight through the 50s, there's a very interesting history of women who worked as jazz musicians. We all think about the great jazz musicians, everybody from the piano players, Louis Armstrong, the Krupas, the Buddy Richards, the drummers, all of these wonderful people, the Coltrane's and all of that. Well, there were women who were virtuosos during this entire period of time whose names have sort of fallen out of that history. So you had these people like Marion McPartland and Esperanza Spalding and Terry Lynn Carrington, all the way through Patrice Rushen, who I used to go see in St. Louis all the time. Wonderful.
Love Patrice Rushen.
Who were part and parcel and very important to the development of all that music. All those names that we think about, but these women have fallen by the wayside. This documentary speaks to that history in all of these women. Wonderful, wonderful performances in this documentary by these people. So if you are a music lover, particularly a lover of big band music and jazz in general,
good stuff.
From late 20s, this is where you want to be.
And then we've also got a doc called Tap World, which is kind of an expansion on a short film called Tap Heat. And it is if you love tap dancing, and I just adore tap dancing. It's something my father always used to want me to get into, and never, obviously never did. So I kind of have that missed thing. And I would have been a terrible tap dancer.
You're good at soccer.
But I'm not coordinated enough to dance. But anyway, tap dancing is just wonderful, and you can go all the way back, obviously, to Gene Kelly, and all the way up to Gregory Hines. And there's a wonderful tradition of tap dancing. Anyway, these are tap dancers from all over the world, and this is from Virgil Films. And it basically just deals. It's kind of a. It is kind of a competition in a way. You've got 115 different people who submitted from over a dozen different countries, and they chose the very, very best and kind of weave them together in this. And it's just wonderful. It is absolutely wonderful. You see some of the best dancing in the world, and it's from all over. I mean, there are tap dancers from every single continent in here. There are tap dancers from India, for crying out loud. I never knew they tap danced in India. I've seen Bollywood documentaries. There's no tap dancing in those things.
They never quite get there.
I've seen the dancing. I love Bollywood dancing, but it's not tap dancing. It's like, how, it's very surprising and wonderful to discover how universal tap dancing is.
Fantastic. This is an interesting little documentary series that I have here called The Last Season. This is sort of poignant. This is about two old soldiers, Vietnam veteran and a Cambodian refugee. They were soldiers in the war, and how they sort of bond over a search for this particular kind of mushroom. It's about the love of nature and how the old wounds from things that happened long ago can be healed by a common thread, by a common thing that people can sort of wrap their hearts around. It's a lovely movie. It's called The Last Season. So, I don't know, if you have issues around that kind of stuff, it might be the kind of thing you want to check out.
And now we're going to get into a few, as we start to wrap out the show, we're going to start to cover some foreign stuff. And Tim, I have a really interesting title here. It is rather fortuitous that you wind up here co-hosting the show today. Mark would have said, why don't you and I do any commentaries anymore? This is a 3-film set from the Cohen Film Collection, a beautiful Blu-ray, 3 movies by Benoit Jacquot, the amazing French director, and the films all have kind of a very common feminist thread to them. Yeah. And the films are spanning his career: the wonderful The Disenchanted, A Single Girl, and Keep It Quiet, all featuring some of the greatest actresses you can imagine. Judith Godrèche in The Disenchanted, Virginie Ledoyen in A Single Girl, and Isabelle Huppert in Keep It Quiet. And the best thing about this set, Tim, is that it's got 3 commentaries by you and I.
one on each one of the films.
Yes, one on each
we had a great time talking about those movies. Jacquot being one of our favorite directors, who had a film recently.
Yes,
that we actually talked about on film, which I can't remember the title of it right now. It was also an exquisite film.
Three Hearts. That was the film. Three
Yeah,
Hearts.
that's it. Just an exquisite film.
Charlotte Gainsbourg and
Mastriani's the chair. Mastriani.
Chiara Mastriani.
Lovely film. Also with sort of female classic Benoit Jacquot, and we had a great time talking about those three movies. We went pretty deep.
We went really deep. I mean, it's really wonderful stuff, and there's a lot of great extras on here. Obviously our commentaries are, that's what you really want to tune in for. But no, there are some really interesting on-camera discussions with Jacquot and Kent Jones that get into a lot of the details, which were wonderful to watch because we watched those before doing the commentaries, and it triggered a lot of our thoughts as well. So I mean, if you're a Jacquot fan, even if you're not, I mean, he's just one of the great filmmakers of the modern French era. He's just especially the real-time camera work that he does in some of these. I mean, A Single Girl is amazing. It's all real-time.
Yeah.
It's really impressive.
There's an opening sequence in that film when he's in the car behind that character. That entire scene plays out from the back seat.
Yep.
And it's just an absolutely extraordinary.
It's fantastic. Carry on.
A Special Day, a 1977 film starring Sophia Loren and Marcello Mastroianni, which is interesting because Cher is in that other movie. This is an interesting film too. Love them when they're together. Just the other day, I had
this is the Criterion.
This is the Criterion disc and Blu-ray. Just the other day, I had a chance to watch the Sika set with Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow.
Oh, that's
fun. So fun with those three sequences with Sophia and Mastroianni. So this is another one of those. It's just an absolutely fantastic movie.
Beautiful, yeah. He's just. I mean, Mastroianni is just. He's one of the great stars of all time. He's one of those few guys who could just sort of, and Jack Nicholson has this too. He can just sort of magnetize you in a close-up.
Well, yeah, and he's more than Fellini's alter ego.
Yeah,
we think of him, and it's a lot of like walking around those Fellini films, but he's much deeper than that.
Also from Criterion is a film that I would probably consider this at least one of the 10 best films ever made. I might even pop it up into the top 5. Masaki Kobayashi's Kwaidan. Kwaidan means ghost story in Japanese. This was made in 1965, right in the heat of the Japanese New Wave. It is the archetypal Japanese New Wave film because it is stylistically audacious. It is brash with its colors. Its storytelling is just aggressive. It does all of the things that were sort of scattered throughout other films during the Japanese New Wave, but this sort of brings it all together. It is an anthology of ghost stories, and the most dazzling, of course, being Oichi the Earless, which is a creepy name if there ever was one, but it is everything about this is just astonishing. Kobayashi, really one of the great one of the great Japanese directors of all time. Other than Kwaidan, his most famous films are also available on a Criterion set, which is the Human Condition trilogy. 3 films, each of them 3 hours long, detailing a facsimile of his experience during World War II as a reluctant soldier in the Japanese army during the Chinese occupation. And to go from kind of a 9-hour epic war black and white odyssey to actually a somewhat brisk 3-hour anthology in color is really an extraordinary turnaround. So he just nails it here. He absolutely nails it. This is a 2K restoration with tons of stuff on it. An interview from 1993 with Kobayashi, a new audio commentary with Stephen Prince, who's done a ton of these for Criterion, and various other little tidbits that'll just give you a very, very deep appreciation about the folk tales and the movies. So it is first rate.
And another absolutely fantastic masterpiece by Eric Rohmer, Full Moon in Paris, which is just a lovely, lovely film as well. Fabrice Lucchini.
Yeah,
in this film. Hey, we were talking about him in something else recently. Maybe it was something on the radio on the other show that we do. Or something like that. But he's that face is just exquisite. This is a 1984 film. So if you get a chance, you definitely want to check out Full Moon in Paris. Is this a Criterion? No, it's not. This is just a DVD release.
Just a regular DVD release from Film Movement, actually. So yeah. And then we also have an interesting film that was at Cannes. This is another Film Movement title. This is Amour Fou by Jessica Hausner, and this is, this was a kind of a bit of a thing at Cannes. It's on Blu-ray, which is rather unusual. They're very selective at Film Movement about the films they put on Blu-ray right now. This is a very unusual story. Based in reality that took place in 1811 that deals with a double suicide involving a German author named Heinrich von Kleist and a woman with whom he was involved named Henriette Vogel. It is how this actually happens, because he's a guy who's obsessed with suicide throughout the whole film. He wants to kill himself. He just wants to find the right person to kill himself with. He needs to have someone who was willing to be a partner in this double suicide. It's very deeply twisted and disturbing. And it took me like 3/4 of the movie to realize that this is effectively a dark comedy. If you know that going in, I urge you to know that going in, you will be able to appreciate it a little bit more, because otherwise it just becomes almost unbearably creepy. It is very subtle. It doesn't sort of play its comedic hand in any regard, but the level of absurdism as it grows, eventually you come to sort of realize that it is just...
It's a very staged film. Lots of master shots that are almost painterly.
So you have to sort of just know that going in. It's supposed to be kind of a dark comedy. And then Uli Lommel's Tenderness of the Wolves from Arrow Video, who's doing a lot of interesting stuff now. This is a Blu-ray DVD combo set. And Uli Lommel's Tenderness of Wolves, or Tenderness of the Wolves, is I almost don't even know how to. This is one of the strangest German movies you will ever see. It was produced by Fassbender, who briefly shows up in it. And like all of Fassbender's films, it is completely different from anything you would expect to be like any other Fassbender film. But it's not a Fassbender film. It is, of course, directed by Uli Lommel, who is a contemporary and a friend of Fassbender's. And it's kind of a serial killer vampire thing, but it is also it's based on a historical event that actually inspired Fritz Lang's M. But it takes a very different angle on it, and it does it in a really macabre, almost horrific, almost over the top way. German films from this particular period were very, how would I say, they could be very subtle or they could be very extreme, and there was really no in-between. And Fassbender tended to make very subtle films, except on a few occasions when he made things like Querelle, which is very extreme, the giant sort of towers shaped like penises and all that weird stuff. And this goes into a very stylistic extreme, and it's pretty gruesome. It's pretty gruesome. So I won't recommend it to anybody, but if you're kind of an exploitation fan, and if you're a foreign film fan, if you like things like Eyes Without a Face, the famous French film, it has that kind of foreign horror quality to it, but it's not like a Polanski film. Let's put it that way.
I'm looking at the Marquise of O right here. This is a mid '70s special jury prize at Cannes. Eric Rohmer film, another Eric Rohmer film set in about the 1799 late 1800s. It's about a marquise who becomes pregnant by circumstances that she has to explain to her. It's actually a very witty and beautiful film. It's funny. Fassbender and Rohmer sort of go together to me in a certain sort of way. It's an interesting sort of journey that they mark, making these sort of beautiful films that aren't quite metaphysical, but exist in a world that doesn't really, in worlds that don't really exist at all, do they?
No.
Interesting stuff. And Tu dors, Nicole, how do you say that in French, Wade?
Tu dors, Nicole. Sleep, in other words, go to sleep, Nicole.
Which is a recent film, 2014 film. The director of that film, if I'm not mistaken,
Stéphane Lafleur.
He's an editor. I'm sure he's directed a few films. He directed a film called Monsieur Lazare.
Oh, that's the guy. No, which the French Canadian film.
The French Canadian film, right?
It was Oscar nominated.
Yeah, he edited that film. This one I actually haven't seen, but it strikes me as interesting for that reason alone.
Oh wow. Well, anyway, this is funded by Telefilm Canada, a French language Canadian film, Blu-ray from Kino Lorber, and neither of us has seen it yet, but it certainly seems to be. It's essentially about a young girl and her kind of coming of age experiences in Quebec after she graduates from high school. So
if it's as good a director as he is an editor,
I'll tell you,
Michel Lazard's an excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, any coming of age film in French, even if it's Quebecois, which is an accent that tends to kind of make my skin crawl, but there's something about coming of age films in French. They just feel more serious.
Yeah.
When little kids do something and they say it in French, you just kind of feel.
Well,
like,
now that they just elected Trudeau.
That's
when
right.
I was a kid, his dad was the president.
Same here. His dad was president for like 20 years or something. It was a very long. It was almost like he was going to declare himself king of Canada at a certain point.
This guy has better hair,
and apparently better abs too. And then the last two quick mentions, two more film movement films: Marie's Story by Jean-Pierre Ameris. And Stations of the Cross by Dietrich Bruggemann. Stations of the Cross is kind of not for everyone, but actually quite good. A very interesting German film. German films tend to get philosophically very heavy in recent days, and this kind of goes in the same camp with the French-Canadian film Jesus of Montreal, the Denis Arcand film, which is finding metaphors for the Christ story in modern-day situations. And this film is told in 14 fixed-angle single shots. And the whole idea is, it sort of parallels the Stations of the Cross, Christ's crucifixion, and all of that through this, young girl's, experiences. It's very audacious, not entirely successful, but very interesting and bold. And then Marie's Story, of course, is just a wonderful, absolutely beautiful period film based on actual events that took place where there was a young girl who was kind of like
a Helen Keller kind of
very Helen Keller thing.
Story.
She was born deaf and blind, and Isabelle Carré plays the nun who sort of helps her. Annie.
Like
Anne Bancroft and the Miracle Worker. Sort of connect to the world. So it is. It's like
but it covers that entire life period.
Yes.
Their entire time together. So we see her when she arrives at the.
But it's all it's 19th century. It's much more period. It feels it's more European, and it's wonderful. So it is a kind of a miracle worker story. Isabelle Carré and Ariana Brivoire perform in it, and they're very good. And Ameris is a very, very good director as well. All right, Tim, thank you.
All right, that was a lot of fun.
That was, and you will be here next week as well, and then we'll have Mark back after the...
We should do more opera.
We'll get it. Absolutely. All right, we'll see you all next week.